what's going on, everybody? All right, one of the questions that I get asked pretty frequently is if I apply my own graphics on the trucks that I have. The answer is yes. Before I started driving, I was actually a sign maker. Early on in my careers that I've had, I was a sign maker for about 3 years. These are the methods that I use to put on large scale vinyl, and especially vinyl with a lot of mass to it. You run the risk of either getting creases or bubbles, and I'll show you how to put those on with the potential of not having any of those. But if you do have some, I'll also show you how to get those out without ruining your vinyl. This is going to be a wet method and a dry method, and let's run through the things that you're going to need to do this. So if you're putting these on dry, one of the first things you're going to need, whether it's dry or wet, actually, you're going to need some masking tape. The next thing you're going to need, if you're doing this wet, is a spray bottle with slightly soapy water. I can't stress that enough. It only takes like 3 to 5 drops of soap. You don't want it too soapy or your vinyl will slide around too much and it won't release from the transfer paper. The next thing you're going to need is some type of card. If you have a squeegee, that would be preferable. But if you don't, you can actually use a card. The thicker the better, but the flexibility will actually help you push bubbles, and I'll show you that later. And the last thing you'll need is a very sharp knife, some type of razor blade, anything that will cut. The finer the better. An X-Acto blade works perfect. And that's it. That's all you'll need to apply this, either wet or dry. So one thing I was wanting to show is most definitely be aware of the graphics or the font that you're using, because the smaller the detail on this stuff, the more likely it's going to be to let go. At some point, these really fine lines, like here, really anything that ends in a point, you want to make sure that it's not just a super sharp point. Here's one example. The closer, well, let's see if we can zoom in on that. Anyway, if you can move the end around like that with your finger after you apply it, it's not going to last. So what you're going to do is just kind of go down to the point that it moves. Just take your thumbnail and just pop that off right there. You want to kind of leave a rounded edge. You got to think about washing and wind when it comes to some of this stuff, and what's going to hold up through that. There's another one that's going to definitely let go, so we'll get rid of that. For the most part, stuff like this, the wider edge, heat is definitely, this is in the sun right now, obviously. Heat's going to help that out a ton. But yeah, just think about that when you're applying stuff like this, and the logos you choose. I chose this font just because it kind of looks like a label maker. But I know that not every little piece is going to survive, which is fine. That's fine. I could do actually without all these accents, and it'll still look like I want it to look. So yeah, be careful choosing stuff like that. All right, so for this part of the door, I'm going to show you what I do for this. It's a pretty long DOT number. You can see it kind of compared to my hand there. I'm going to show you the way that I put this on here. The top isn't cut perfectly, so I'm going to show you how I line that up. It's not going to be absolutely perfect, but I'm going to the main thing I'm going to do is use the body lines of the truck. This corner right here and this corner right here, I'm going to try to line that up between that and pretty much centered on the door. You can pretty much eyeball that though. So the first thing I do is just run a strip of masking tape across the top. You want to get it on the very top, but you don't want to cover any of the vinyl, because you're going to flip this up later. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're just going to need it to stick. All right, since this doesn't have to be perfectly exact, I'm going to kind of just eyeball it on the center of the door anyway. There, and you can adjust it as needed as you go on. Make sure that everything on here is laying flat, which this isn't right now. Got a crease in the masking tape here. There we go. right, you're just gonna loosely put it up because you're gonna kind of start to measure somewhat. If you want it perfect, you can measure with the measuring tape. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this little card I have here, and it's got writing all over it, and I'm gonna kind of measure just how far the bottom of the letter is from the sharp line of that door mark. And same with the top. So that's it's actually pretty good. Put the top there, and you're gonna come to the other side here. Measure that. Well, that's all right. Okay, so we didn't have to make any adjustments. But if you did, you would just lift up one side, move it, remeasure, so on and so forth. Just kind of want it even with the body line here because that's what's going to make it look crooked. And since this is such a long piece, it's easier to always work with short pieces. I'm just going to split this right here. I'm going to use my card and just tear this against it as close as I can get until you've got your piece all the way up. Now you've got two separate pieces to work with. And then we'll just take this, kind of stick our tape to the top now. Okay, we're done here. You want to do the same to the corners here. You just lift that up. You'll separate the backing from the transfer tape. Just slightly there. Get your little crease in it. Hold that back down. And then you're just going to work from the top down, as even as you can get it. You don't want to go all the way to the crease. You just want to slowly make sure that it's evenly coming down. That's it. Don't worry about bubbles in your transfer tape, those don't matter. You just want to make sure there's no bubbles or creases in your letters. You'll slightly be able to see them on here, and hopefully we got one or two. I'll show you how to get rid of those. Yeah, we got us a crease there, good. I'll show you how to get that out. Now the biggest thing you want to do if you do end up getting a crease is do not try to work it out with the transfer tape on. You want to do that with it off, so I'll show you that. We'll kind of just rub these down a little bit. Get it on there enough to be able to take the tape off. You always want to go slow just in case something starts to lift. All right, we're good there. The crease I got in there. Well, there it is on the D right there. Two sides of it. All right, so what we're going to do to get that out of there, since we didn't press down extremely hard, is you're going to just have that and you're going to slightly push that out. And then you're going to work to the other side and slowly do the same thing. And you don't want to start digging with a corner or you'll tear your vinyl. And then just use finger pressure to get the rest out. Same on this side, we'll have that and go out. Now if you were to try to do that with the transfer tape on, it'd put a nasty crease in it and you would pretty much end up having to cut that out. Now here's a bubble. You'll just work that out the exact same way. That's the good thing about having a card, is it's flimsy enough to be able to focus your pressure on one spot. All right, now for the big logo. So this is 65 inches long. So it's just right at 5.5 feet almost. And what I do with this is I don't put a strip across this because we're going to put this on wet. What I did is I just put one piece of tape in the corner here, another piece of tape in the corner here, and just like with the other longer logo, we're actually going to cut this. Once I get this kind of where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and cut the load out of the Mizer and put those on separately. And you always want to start with the piece that's going to be off the most or will give you the most reference. And once again, we've got a big long straight line in this Mizer section here that I'm going to be able to line up with the door panel on both ends, and then we'll just work this off here. The reason I put this where I did is two points. One, I wanted to make sure that the logo isn't going to go past the door seam here, but the biggest thing is that as far as how much I have to cut for the door right here, you'll have to cut that piece and fold it, wrap it in on each side. I'll show you how to do that in a second, but you want to cut as little as possible, and this lines up perfect with the eye. You can just feel the seam right there. So all I'd have to do is cut that piece there, cut that piece there. Instead, if I had this over just 2 more inches, I would have to cut a line through this entire section of vinyl right here, which I don't want to do. So that lines up perfect, and it lets me know that whenever I put this bigger piece on, you want to put the big piece on because it's got the most reference to line everything up. I'll just line the load up, you know, based off of where I put the Mizer section. So that's where we're at. So now we've kind of got a gist of where it's going to go. I'm going to go ahead and cut the load off of the Mizer piece. I'm going to pull the Mizer piece down, and we're going to put that on wet, and I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so this part's really boring. There's really no audio, just cars going by and me doing what I need to do. I needed both hands for this. I couldn't really hold the camera. Couldn't hear me from the distance I was at talk anyway. So what I'm doing now is I'm slowly pulling down the vinyl from the backing, and I'm spraying it with water as I pull it down. You can tell here it's really windy. The sun's actually directly on the side of the vehicle, which I don't recommend. This is a lot easier to do in the shade if you've got it, but for recording purposes and all that, I went ahead and did it outside. Still just slowly dragging down the vinyl, spraying it as I go. Just need a little bit to get there. I was actually afraid that if I went too far, the wind was going to catch the vinyl and throw it out of my hand and lay it on the ground, which would be terrible. So just slow going at this point, pulling down, spraying. And once you get to the end of that, you'll actually just pull it away, make sure it's completely soaked in that soapy water. And it's very important. I think I actually got just a tad bit too much soap in this. You'll see when later on, I actually one corner actually starts to lift. So now that you've got your vinyl off the backing, you want to go ahead and spray down the door as well. Then you're going to throw it on there and try to get it on there, you know, pretty close to where you're going to want it. This will move around on the door, but it's not going to slide around super free. If it does, you've got too much soap. Once again, that's something to definitely focus on. This doesn't work with a lot of soap. I always use Dawn. That's what I've always used when I was doing this. That's what I use now. And like I said, the 3 to 5 drops is max. That's all you're going to need. And don't shake the bottle up once you do fill it up with water. Just kind of swirl it around and get that soap in there. So now what you're going to do, once you've got it in place, you saw I went ahead and just kind of measured it with the card there again. It's really just following the body line. It doesn't have to be precise on this. It's more visual. You know, if you step back and it looks good, it's going to look fine when it's on. Especially with a vehicle, you know, with the curves and the dips and, you know, the contours of all that. Sometimes exact measurements don't look great. So just do that. Now what you want to do is you want to start working that water out of the vinyl. You're going to kind of see it start coming down from the transfer tape, you know, tiny little bubbles, and the water spits out and all that. On the part here, like the M, it's kind of, the M right here is really the hardest piece to get, because so much water from those 3 points of the M tries to get into the transfer tape, basically the opening of the M itself. A lot of water will get in there. You need to kind of try to squeeze that out through the vinyl, because what will happen is a lot of that water will actually start to lift that vinyl up under there. So as far as the void spaces go with the transfer paper, that's stuff like that with small points or small pieces. You want to try to squeeze a lot of that water out. But for the rest of the image, especially like around the Z, you know, big in the E, even the big pieces of vinyl, you know, once you squeeze that water out, it's going to stick just fine. And now once you've got a majority of the water worked out, you'll kind of tell, because when, just like then, when you go to pull the paper, it'll if it tries to bring the logo up with it, just lay it down again. Try to squeegee as much of that out as you can. Here, the bottom right, you'll see when I get down a little bit lower, the bottom right tried to lift. And instead of keeping going with that right there, what I did is I went ahead and laid everything back down. And then I started trying to work everything out of the top to make sure that it was in place before I messed with the bottom anymore. Once I got to this point and saw that if I was to keep going, a lot of that would peel up again, I went ahead and just moved to the other side. Now, what'll happen is I tried to work this edge back down. That's where you'll see I got in front of the camera here, which, I was kind of racing time. You don't want that to get too dry. I didn't really want to spray it with water anymore to start the process all over. So what I did here was I just made a little bit of arrangements. I made just a few corrections. I was laying down the creases with the squeegee very, very evenly so that it wouldn't actually fold over and crease. It would work that out, and I'll show you later in this video how I do that. So what I did there was I decided to go ahead and start from the other side and pull away, or pull towards where that was trying to lift up on me, and it ended up working very well. So peeling this the other way worked out a lot better because it was pulling away from the section that was actually starting to lift. Or I was actually pulling towards it, not away. So instead of pulling that lift up, it was helping lay it down once I got back down to the bottom. But that right corner was really the only trouble area. I had a couple of spots that didn't want to lay down that would have been a crease if I would have pressed hard, like I was telling y'all earlier. You can see it on top of the R right there. There's one, I think, on top of the M or to the left side of the M. I think there's one down by the Z, but you'll see me lay all those down here in a minute. But yeah, once I got towards here and pulled away from the R, everything laid back where it should have went. And all I had to do was just apply a little bit more pressure and lay everything down, get the creases out. Spray it down with water so the card glides over it good and doesn't end up scratching the surface. And then we'll go into taking out bubbles. Just easily work those over to the edge. You'll see once it gets there, it'll actually spit water out of the side, and sometimes it'll actually make a snap sound. So it's really easy to tell when you get all those out. Got a small little piece trying to lift there. You see the water coming out of it. This one here just runs straight up. Same with that one. Like I said, you'll really see if you had any problem areas. If water shoots out of it, then you'll know you got it. Another area, and this is all just slight pressure. I'm not pushing crazy hard. It's like the last thing you want to do is score or scratch these, and if you do push hard, it will, it's got a possibility of snagging or grabbing some, a spot that's sticky that don't have soap on it, and you'll actually put a crease in it anyway. So you want to do all these little lifts pretty smooth, really slow, and take your time. So you can even work some of them out with your finger and then run the card over it at the last point. Now here we're going to cut the section at the door, cut dead center. It gives you the most room to play with on each side. And here is a part that I didn't include in this. If you do have to do it, if you do have to cut vinyl and wrap it around a tight spot like that, use a heat gun or a hair dryer, something. I wouldn't use a lighter. Use something to get that hot, and it'll actually help it stick. It'll keep it from lifting. Make sure the inside of the door lip's clean also. If you get this too hot, you want to be super easy whenever you're putting heat to this, because if you get it too hot, especially this matte, not only will you risk burning it, which that'll be any color, but with the matte colors, you'll get it too hot and it'll become shiny. So you want to go real slow with that. There you go, guys. When it's done, it'll look like this. And I went ahead and come to this side to show you where I cut this. And I put that D there on purpose so I wouldn't have to cut through an entire section of the D, just the top two side. Just the top side and the bottom side. So that's it. That's how to put big graphics on with water, a little mildly soapy water. So that's all there is to it. That's how I put the bigger logos on, with a couple of different methods, you know, mainly masking tape and the soapy water trick. So that's all there is. If you guys want to see anything else about anything you've seen on the channel, how I did it, or how to do it, period, just let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think about this, and I hope this helps some of y'all out there. I've had a lot of questions get asked about if I put these on, and if so, how did I do it without getting a lot of bubbles and tears and rips and creases and stuff like that. So that's it, guys. We'll see you next time.